Hey everybody, welcome back to Kiki Loves Nigeria. On this episode of Kiki Loves Nigeria, we're going to talk about another romance scam. This romance scam takes place, the victim lived in Canada and the scammer takes place, in Ethiopia, but it ends up in China. Yeah, this is a transatlantic, I guess that's what you want to call this one, a transatlantic romance scam that goes horribly wrong. So let me introduce you to Susan Thaler. Susan Thaler is from Ontario, Canada. And Miss Susan is 64 years old, and she is a mother and a proud grandmother. Miss Susan decides she wants to go online and find love after her husband passes away, and she decides that she's tired of being lonely. But what Miss Susan does not realize is that this love is nothing more than a romance scam, and this romance scam will lead her to prison. Miss Susan met her husband when she was 13 years old, you guys. And she had been married to him all of her life. He passed away in 2016. And in 2016, that was her first time really being alone and ever having to really take care of herself and look out for herself. Miss Susan had been married all of her life, so after her husband passed away, the loneliness was profound. The loneliness and the depression was something that she had not anticipated. The heaviness, the sheer heaviness of the sadness was something she had not anticipated and did not know what to do with. Miss Susan waited 5 years. Then she decided that she would go online to meet someone. She said she really enjoyed the attention that she got when she went online, so she continued to go online and meet different people. Well, she met this man, and his name was Walter Williams. She was really attracted to him. She met Walter on Facebook. His name was Walter Williams. And Walter Williams claimed to be a doctor. He said he was a doctor who worked for the United Nations, and he said he was deployed in Syria. He said he was 63 years old, and he too was a widower, just like Miss Susan. He began love bombing Miss Susan, giving her all kind of scenarios of how much he loved her and couldn't live without. Miss Susan, who hadn't been in a relationship other than her husband, she had been with all her life, thought this love bombing was real. She thought Mr. Walter Williams was truly in love with her. So she was willing to do anything and everything Mr. Williams asked her to do. And this was after 30 days, people. After 30 days of knowing him, she was in total love with him, and she was borrowing money to send to him. That's how her daughter found out that she was sending this man money, because she asked her daughter for $1,500 so she could send it to Mr. Walter Williams. So her mom started looking in her mother's account. Her daughter started looking into her mom's account. And once she looked into the account, oh my gosh, she discovered that she had given this man $205,000. Miss Susan's daughter also discovered something else. Miss Susan's daughter also discovered a marriage certificate. She found a marriage certificate that said that Miss Susan and Mr. Williams were married. Yes. Soon as she found that, she contacted the police. She contacted the news. Yeah, the local news. And guess what she did? She did a reverse image search and she found out that this man was a scammer. And Miss Susan cut it completely off and she refused to talk to this man, and the marriage wasn't even real. It was a fake too. So Miss Susan began to do some research on romance scams because she realized that she was really involved in a romance scam. So she said, let me do some research on romance scams and let me share my experiences. Let me write a book so I can stop other women from being hurt, so I can help others not be scammed the way I was scammed. So in the midst of writing this book, she goes online and she meets another man, and his name is James Calwood. Now, Mr. Calwood, unlike Mr. Williams, is the perfect gentleman. He doesn't ask for money. He doesn't pretend like they're married. He doesn't do any of that. To the contrary, he spends money lavishly on Miss Susan. He bought her a ticket. Yes, he did. A ticket to Ethiopia. And he also paid for her to stay in a luxury hotel while she was there. Miss Susan was so happy. She couldn't wait to tell her daughter about the ticket and about her new man she found online. And not only was this man lavishing her with gifts, he was helping her write her book. He was helping her write a book about romance scams. Because Miss Susan had lost all of her savings in her last relationship with Mr. Williams, she had to move in with her daughter. So she had to tell her daughter that she was planning on going to Ethiopia to visit her boyfriend. Well, she told her daughter she was going to Utopia. And her daughter said, "What? Utopia? What is Utopia?" So the daughter looked around and she looked in her room. And that's when she found a ticket for her mother to go to Ethiopia. And her daughter was extremely concerned at that point. She felt like, oh no, Mom is once again in a romance scam. She begged and begged and begged her mother not to go, but y'all know how it goes. She went anyway. She went to go meet Mr. Calwood. She said he even took her on a safari. He took her places Mr. Williams never even talked about taking her. She was in love, people. So remember, things were a little bit different in this relationship. Remember, Mr. James never asked for money. So she believed, Miss Susan believed him, and she trusted him. She told him everything, and they were writing this book together. So she felt like she could go to Ethiopia and she could spend time with him and that she was going to be fine. Well, once she got there, people, she said she had the time of her life. She said the hotel was really, really nice. She said the people at the hotel treated her so nice and kind. She said she even had a pet there that she took care of. She loved Ethiopia. She talked to her family and her friends every single day, and she told them about all the exciting things she was doing with James while she was in Ethiopia. She told them James was treating her like a queen, that this was the best time in her whole entire life, and that they were doing something that she never thought she would ever do in her life, and that's go on an African safari, people. She was happy and she was in love. James paid for the tickets. She was in Ethiopia for 3 weeks. James paid for the adventure, and then it was time to go. But in the meantime, we find out that that was all lies, people. That there was no African safari. That there was no James Calwood. No, people. Mr. Calwood didn't show up. He wasn't there. He didn't take her on a safari. She made it up. She got the pictures off the internet and pretended like he was there and they were going on that adventure. Really happened is Mr. Callwood did not show up. She was just pretending because she didn't want to be embarrassed and look foolish again to her family and friends. Mr. Callwood had reached out to her and told her he couldn't make it and that he could meet her in China. And would she please fly to China so he could meet her in China? And in the meantime, would you please take these gifts that I bought for you? So Mr. Callwood has these two friends in Ethiopia who are driving Miss Susan around. They're basically the ones taking Miss Susan to see Ethiopia. They're taking Miss Susan from point A to point B. They're the ones showing Miss Susan around Ethiopia. Well, they are also the ones who brought Miss Susan the gifts from Mr. Callwood. They brought Miss Susan a suitcase from Mr. Callwood, and this suitcase was filled with dresses. One of the dresses Miss Susan has on in that picture, she wore that on the plane. Yep, she wore that on the plane. So of course Miss Susan is excited to be going to China. She's been in Ethiopia for 3 weeks having a wonderful time. And now she gets to go to China and she hasn't spent a dime. The only thing she's paid for are a pair of sandals, and that's because the other ones got broken. What could go wrong? And now she has a suitcase full of gifts, a suitcase full of beautiful African dresses, a beautiful African garment. Oh my God. What else could Miss Susan ask for? And she has a lovely, lovely man who's spending all this money on her, even though he couldn't show up in Ethiopia to meet her. But this trip to China, he's going to make up for it. Yep, he's going to make up for everything with this trip to China. Yep. He's going to meet her in China, and they're going to make up for all the lost time, all those 3 weeks that she was in Ethiopia waiting for him. They're going to make up for that in China. She tells her daughter, and you know her daughter is not too pleased. She's not too happy about that. Tries to talk her mother into coming home. But remember, Mr. Callwood is paying for her tickets. Mr. Callwood is controlling her movements because he's controlling the money. He's telling her where she can go and where she cannot go. She doesn't have the money to fly back home. He paid for the ticket. So she pretty much, people, has to go to China at this point, so why not enjoy it? So she tells her daughter, just relax. I'm going to be fine. China is a great place. I'm going to have a nice time. Please don't worry. So the daughter just agrees reluctantly, but she tracks her mother's movements, okay? She sees her mother takes off, and she sees her mother lands in China. But then all of a sudden, her mother's movement stops. Her location stops. She stops moving, and she can't contact her. She keeps trying to text her, but she's not texting back. So she knows something badly is wrong. Something seriously is wrong. What Susan and her daughter did not know was that the vacation she had just went on is a popular drug route for drug mules who are going to China to smuggle cocaine. They take it from Colombia to West Africa to Ethiopia, and from Ethiopia to China. Yeah, Colombia, West Africa, Ethiopia, and then to China. So her daughter got in touch with this international organization in Ethiopia that handles international crimes like romance scams. So she got in touch with them and she let them know that her mother unknowingly smuggled cocaine into China, and she was a victim of a romance scam. Well, the Global Initiative began to look into this. So he went to the hotel. He met with some people, and while he was in Ethiopia, to try to see if he could discover, who these people were. So he went back and he interviewed the people she took the picture with, and he interviewed different people at the hotel, and he said everybody at the hotel was reluctant to even speak with him. But one thing he did say, that the two men that she was running around Ethiopia with were not Ethiopian. He said that he could tell by the accent, and people were telling them by the accent these were Nigerians. So the next day, Susan calls her daughter and she lets her know that she's been arrested in China for attempting to smuggle drugs into China. And she's now facing life in prison. Susan was used as a drug mule in a romance scam. Now her daughter is trying to get her out. So let me tell you how this went down. You remember the gifts that the boyfriend had given her, Mr. Calwood, and that these two guys had delivered to her? Remember that? That they had delivered her a suitcase? Well, people, those dresses that he had given her, they were all lined with cocaine. Yes, all those dresses he had given her were lined with cocaine. So her daughter got in touch with this international organization in Ethiopia that handles international crimes like romance scams. So she got in touch with them and she let them know that her mother unknowingly smuggled cocaine into China, and she was a victim of a romance scam. Well, the Global Initiative began to look into this. So he went to the hotel. He met with some people, and while he was in Ethiopia, to try to see if he could discover, who these people were. So he went back and he interviewed the people she took the picture with, and he interviewed different people at the hotel, and he said everybody at the hotel was reluctant to even speak with him. But one thing he did say, that the two men that she was running around Ethiopia with were not Ethiopian. He said that he could tell by the accent, and people were telling them by the accent these were Nigerians. Now her daughter knows without a shadow of a doubt that her mother was indeed a drug mule, and that her mother indeed was taken advantage of. And now she has to figure out, what is she going to do next? Where does she go now to help her mom? Her daughter is just in total disbelief, and Susan is in total shock. Yeah, they're both trying to figure out, where do we go next? What do we do now? So her daughter flies to China. Her daughter goes to China. So while in China, her daughter meets with a man. Well, he's actually a priest, and he has several nonprofit agencies in China. What he does there, he works with women who were in the sex trade and they want to get out. He works with them, and he also works with people who were drug mules. Okay, these are usually Western women who are middle-aged or older and who were convicted of smuggling drugs into China. So Susan's daughter contacts him and asks him, can he please help her mother with her situation, because her mother was indeed a victim of a romance scam, and her mother was indeed used as a drug mule. So the father, I did tell you he's a priest, so he said okay, he was going to help her out, because he realized that if she does not get any help, she will probably spend the rest of her life in prison. She will probably spend the rest of her life in prison in China for being a drug mule if she does not get someone to intervene, to say she didn't know. Because China does not take that into consideration, that you were a victim of a romance scam. They will not consider that in your plea. They will not. So he has to go to Ethiopia and prove that she unknowingly, that she did not know that there were drugs sold into the lining and into the buttons of those clothes. She has to prove that she did not know. And if she can't prove that, the priest is scared she's going to spend the rest of her life in prison. So the priest boarded a plane and he went to Ethiopia and he retraced her steps. He went to the hotel where Miss Susan stayed, and he talked to the people Miss Susan talked to. And one thing he said he noticed was that people were reluctant to talk to him. Everyone there appeared to be reluctant, he said, and they did not want to be seen talking to him. He said he couldn't get the surveillance tape. There was a surveillance tape that saw those two men come to the hotel to pick her up. There was a surveillance tape that saw those two men bring that luggage into the hotel and bring those gifts into the hotel. But he could not get copies of that tape for some reason. So I'm not really sure why no one in Ethiopia would help the priest, help Miss Susan win her freedom. I don't know why they wouldn't give her the CCTV footage. I don't know why they wouldn't give written statements. I don't know why. I don't know why they wouldn't help this lady when they know, when they have proof that two men came there and brought that luggage to her, that two men came to visit her regularly and take her where she had to go. Why no one will say that they gave her this luggage and they seen her give her this luggage, they seen them give her this luggage, they seen them give her these gifts and this $150,000 worth of drugs? I don't know. So the father returned to China, and unfortunately he wasn't able to do much for Miss Susan. He continues to go visit Miss Susan, but he wasn't able to help her with her case in any way because he couldn't get any evidence. He couldn't get anything that would help her get her freedom. So he let her daughter know that there's not much he can do. This $150,000 worth of cocaine is not going away. That case is not going away. And people, this just happened. This isn't something old. This is from April of 2023. This is all happening now. Yes. And this is really sad, and this is really painful, because she trusted this man. She thought he loved her. And look what love got her, y'all. So, there you have it. That's the story of Miss Susan Thaler. She's a lady from Ontario, Canada. She lost her husband. She had been married to all her life. And she became a victim of loneliness. So she went online and she met two men who were nothing but romance scammers. And guess what else, y'all? They said they don't even think it was two separate people. They think it was the same Nigerian romance scammer pretending to be two different people. Yes, it was one Nigerian romance scammer pretending to be two different people. And after he took all of her money, he knew she didn't have any money. That's why the new guy, James, didn't bother to ask her for money, because he knew that the old him, Mr. Williams, that he was pretending to be, had taken all the money. So, what else she could do for them? She could be a drug mule for them. And she can give them her life, because she has nothing else to give them. And to a romance scammer, when you don't have any more money, what's next? Your life. Because after that, you're worth nothing to them. Repeat, you're worth absolutely nothing. Yep, they don't care about you. That's the thing about the romance scammer. That's just his job, to scam you, to make you think that he's in love with you, when in reality, he doesn't care about you. He only cares about what you can do for him. All right, y'all. That was the story of Suzanne Thaler from Ontario, Canada. And she's a victim of a romance scam. that landed her in prison in China. And it looks like she's facing life in prison. All right, y'all. Drop y'all comments in the comment section. What y'all think about this? What do y'all think about this? Can y'all believe this story? Can y'all believe this actually happened? And what do y'all think? What do y'all think will happen? Do you think they'll find her guilty in China? Do you think Canada, the Canadian government, will intervene to try to get her out? Drop y'all comments and let me know what y'all think. All right, y'all. That's all I have. I'm going to let y'all hear something from Miss Susan before I go. This is a phone call, a recorded phone call between her and her daughter. In the prison system in China, she doesn't get to see her daughter. I think it was like 15 minutes, 10 minutes a month. And you get one phone call. And I think that's like a month too, like 10 minutes also. So this is one of the phone calls.
I just love you guys.
I love you too.
I'm missing you guys so much. It's unbelievable.
You don't know how much I miss you. I just want you to know that I love you so much, Mom.
I love every single one of my family.
And I want to wish you a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to all of you guys, okay? And Happy New Year. I want you guys to know that I am completely done with internet dating. This is a rude awakening. I've only got 1 minute left.
I love you,
But I
Mom.
want you to know that I love you all with my heart and soul, okay?